How do you have there been moments in matches where you felt like you did sort of give in to the I'm
it
gonna
does
give
happen.
up a little bit?
Yeah, there definitely have been moments where I've gotten to the shit, or this is exactly where we didn't want to end up, and then it ends up being like the snowball effect, and just and you just can't make it back. I remember it was purple belt. This was the last time I fought Mackenzie Dern. When we used to be in the same divisions, and then after that point, we'd either been separated by belt or by weight division. And the last time I fought her was the first match at Worlds. I think was 2000. I want to say 2012 at Worlds, or maybe 2011. 2012. I want to say maybe. No, 2011 for sure. And I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Sorry, I got hyper obsessed about it. And I just remember feeling so overwhelmed. It was just we made the grips, got the guard pull, everything's going, and I'm all right, everything's going to plan. And then one thing ended up where she got past my knee, and then it just was a slow descent and just being smashed. I mean, I think the end points was 9-0 or something. And but if you look at the points and compare it to how the actual match went, it wasn't a total obliteration.
Yeah.
She had to work to get to those positions, but it definitely was a point where I was so distracted in the match. I feel that was the most distracted I'd ever been, where it was one thing, I was shit, this happened, and then I'm trying to work back, and then one thing after another where I just kept getting, I won't say overwhelmed, but distracted would be the best thing. Stupid things too. I know that I think she was really close to making weight at that year, and so your first match, you have to compete in whatever it is that you're wearing, your first match, right, and then you can change afterwards. And this was the first time that I'd seen her compete without a rash guard or t-shirt over, over her sports bra, and yeah, distracting. I don't want to go too much of the detail of it, but it was just a lot. Mm-hmm. And I was I remember specifically trying to frame and try to push, and it was just a lot.
I think I'm picking up what you're putting
down.
Yeah,
right. And again, no fault on her, not shaming there, but I was so distracted. Right. Not by that, but everything, her pressure, and then if it wasn't her getting past my guard, or her laying onto me, and then me trying to make the frames and the frames not working. I was oh no, and it was this just slow okay, well, I mean, we keep fighting, but definitely in my head is I can't make it back. I don't think I can make it back from here. I don't think there's ever been a match where I just stopped fighting at all, even though I knew I was so far behind. I'm definitely one of those you're gonna have to kill me. I'm not gonna stop. But knowing that mentally, it's we've already accepted, but we'll still fight. Yeah. So it does happen, but it's more rare for that to happen. I feel and I haven't even. It's been so long since I've competed, so I have no idea what my mindset would be now as compared to when I was competing very, very consistently all the time.
I have two questions. The first is with regards to this match that we just watched. This is not to take away anything from your win, obviously, but that was a tactical error on her part. She was up to advantages with 15 seconds left. Yeah. She should not have gone for the knee bar.
No.
Because she exposed her back.
She could have fought safely for sure. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, on some of her previous matches, before, she's always been the kind to take risks because she doesn't just want to win by technicality. Mm-hmm. She likes having I won't say the flashier win, but the big win, especially on a big stage like that. Yeah. So I feel she really, really wanted that submission. Okay. And I think she felt because even with that 2-advantage lead, that maybe she was safe enough with that amount of time. So maybe an underestimation on her part for sure. Yeah. But yeah, she definitely took a risk that didn't need to, and that was for me to capitalize on.
Yeah, and you did. Yeah. Beautifully.
I was oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, perfect.
My second question is, you mentioned really kind of diving into the mental side of things. I'm curious to know what that looked like for you when you started to learn it and how you started to implement things. Yeah. What things did you implement?
It was super uncomfortable because I had fought it for so long, and it took for me to have a full-on panic attack and a mental breakdown at a tournament for me to just finally be like, okay, fine, I'll do the stupid training. I'll do the stupid mental coaching training, whatever the hell, because it's uncomfortable, but like anything's got to be better than what I'm feeling right now. And I was highly resistant. I was definitely one of those who did not want to admit to fear of failure. I was like, I'm not afraid of like failing. Like I don't have performance anxiety. That's absurd. I've been a performer my entire life. Since 5 years old, I've been on a stage. Like there's no way that I have performance anxiety. I just need to train harder. I just need to stop complaining. I need to stop being lazy. Like all the self-judgment, all of like the like I just need to be tougher. Like mindset was essentially blocking me from getting better because I just didn't want to admit that I was weak. I wasn't weak. But you know, considering that I had always been like a smaller person, you know, I grew up being very skinny, very tiny, got picked on, always had either, you know, classmates or family members, someone was always making some comment about my size. Too small, need to eat more, or you're too weak, or you can't do these things because you're too small. And so like, of course, you know, like like people wonder why I am the way that I am. It's like, well, yeah, it's like, why do I want to be strong? Why do I want to like not be a fucking pushover? And it's like, because that's what I had to grow up with. So, oh my God, where was I going with this?
well, so we were talking about
okay,
kind of
so admitting that I was weak would be essentially saying like, oh, like I'm useless, I don't have value, and no one wants to admit that, you know. I remember the first time I touched the material, like I was like, yeah, I'll see if I'm gonna do this mental training stuff, and I think I got like 1 or 2 pages in, and it was so deeply uncomfortable because like the first 2 lessons are about admitting that you have a fear of failure, admitting that your value as a person is attached to your results. You had to admit that. You had to admit that you're scared, and you had to admit that that like failing is going to be the, like like
this
the death
is a
of you.
book. What book is this?
The program is called The Confident Athlete.
Okay.
I can't remember who it's by off the top of my head. I'd have to Google that. And it's like a 10-day or 14-day program. But when I finally did it, I would do 2 lessons a day as opposed to just 1 lesson. So I pushed it into 1 week as opposed to 2. But like, yeah, the first 2 lessons is essentially admitting that there's a problem, admitting that you're afraid, admitting that you are scared, admitting that you have these deficiencies. And again, as someone who's like, no, I'm not, I'm big and strong and I can do anything, right? Like I did not want to do that. So I was like, yeah, this is stupid. I don't need this. All this is doing is making me feel bad about myself. So I kind of like tossed it to the side. And I was like, yeah, and that's where the mindset's like, I just need to train harder. I need to just zen out and just ignore that I'm afraid and just do better, right? And of course, like that didn't work. 2012, I did PANS, and like I submitted everybody up to the finals. And then I lost in the finals by a stupid rookie mistake. Like she tried to attack my foot, she fell back, and all I needed to do was come up for the sweep. And then for whatever reason, like there was like 2 minutes left, and in like 1 minute, I just blanked out. I could not recollect anything that happened in that minute. And by the time I actually realized, I was like, oh shit, I just need to come up. It was too late. The advantage went to her for her attacking my foot as opposed to me getting the sweep. And I lost by that 1 advantage. And I was like, fuck, like I had submitted everybody, like, and I was like, I'm not gonna let this get to me. I'm not gonna let this get to me at all. But it did. It was haunting me. Then later down the line, it's the month before Worlds, and everything was supposed to be about like, oh, let's try a different game plan so that you have a top game, so that you're not just always playing guard. We need to work on your passing, you know. And I had this big fear of like losing to her again, right? And so we get to this. It was like a Long Beach Open, and it was just supposed to be the prep tournament, and I was only allowed to use the new stuff I was working on. I was like, okay, so you're telling me that you're telling me that I have to lose, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to lose. You want me to use like, I was like, I already know that you can win doing what you always do. I need to see you using the stuff that we've been working on in tournament, so then we have time to workshop it and get it better for Worlds. This is just the prep tournament. This isn't the big one. I'm like, no, everything's a win. Everything's a competition. Everything's important, right? Yeah. I barely won the first match. That would be like my first time fighting Patty Fontes, and like we've had so many matches against each other.
Were you doing the new stuff?
Yes,
Okay.
I committed to it.
You did? Okay.
I did, begrudgingly.
Okay.
Then from the very moment, like going in, like the first match, and like, all right, we're gonna be on top, and we're gonna try to pass. Like, I think I barely won either by like an advantage of the sweep, and like the end of that match was her almost submitting me with a triangle and me like panicking, and I'm like, I don't want to be here, you know, like, and I felt like I was like looking at, I was like, is this what you wanted to see? This is what you want? You want to see me struggling? You want to see me lose? Like, like, you know, like all of that, like just negative, like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you making me do this? And then the final match would have been against Maxine Thailand, who I lost against at Pans, right, earlier in the year. I was like, I'm going to go against her again. And then, whereas it was a close match at Pans, you know, I'm already going with the like spiraling like mindset of like, I don't want to lose. Like, this is dumb. This is stupid. I don't want to be here. And then she submits me, and I just was panicking. I couldn't control my breathing. I'm crying. I'm like, everyone's, you know, I felt like, oh, she's just doing that for attention. Oh, look at her. She's such a sore loser. Like, I don't think anybody was saying that, but that's what was going through my head. And I just felt like such a disappointment. I felt like utter low, like, oh, I'm such trash. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to do the training.
Okay.
I have to do it because I don't want to go through this again. This really sucked.
Yeah.
And then I did the work. I got through the uncomfortable part, like the first 2 lessons that were super, super uncomfortable. We have to admit that, you know, like I'm not perfect, and I can lose, and I'm, you know, like all of these things. I'm afraid. We had to admit these. Once we got past that uncomfortable part and we had admitted that was there, then it became easier. Then it's all about boosting your confidence, like being able to call on the things that you've actually done. Like, okay, what can I objectively say that I have accomplished to boost my own confidence? Like, okay, well, I'm a good guard player and I have a high submission rate from, you know, XYZ guard or whatever. I train consistently. Like, so I had to start building that. And then after that's trying to make sure I can build a way to reframe my thoughts. So especially like, everything that's leading before the tournament and then at the tournament. So things like giving yourself a cue so that when your thoughts are going in a way that's not going to serve you, you can reel yourself back in. Mine is shaking water out of my ear. So like, you know, like when swimmers get out the pool together, that would be mine. So if there's any time like a thought that would come into my head that did not serve me, or was like, this isn't going to help me, like, what if they train more? What if I didn't train enough? What if, and like, oh, nope. Like had to do like the little shaky thing, or sometimes you even see me like, get out of there, you know?
Yeah.
And needless to say, it worked. I went from my worst performance, you know, ever, and feeling the lowest I've ever felt, to finally making it to the finals of Worlds, but it was in the absolute division. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm a damn featherweight fighting these middle heavyweights. Like, what is going on? I'm like, why am I here? And, you know, I lost by a footlock. She got me good. Damn, she got me good. But I was like, fuck, I was only able to make it there because I went through that training. And I lost in the semifinals of my weight division, but making it to the finals of the absolute was still absurd.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Cyborg was actually competing that year. Chris Cyborg, you know, and
I
was like, oh shit, what happens if she's in the absolute? For whatever reason, she didn't do the absolute. And I think everybody was like, you know, but, and then ever since then, I was like, okay, this works.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep doing it. We're keep working on it. We're gonna keep journaling. We're gonna keep writing down the things. We're gonna keep. It wasn't like a one and done. It was something that became, not just a habit but a practice.
Okay.
And so now I just speak the good word on like mental prepness, and just understanding, like having to undo the tie that is, I am only valuable for as long as I win, or for as long as I perform well as an athlete, because those two things are completely separate.
Yep.
You know, and so there was a lot of undoing there.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you talk more about the journaling piece? Josh had interviewed Jared Wade not too long ago, and he talks about like writing down meticulously everything that he wants to work on, has worked on, what he's learned, all those things. Does that look or sound similar to you, or what does it look like? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so when I journal, I won't necessarily journal specifically about the jiu-jitsu, although I could. It's going to be more of like where I am at mentally or emotionally with it, because that's such a big I won't say motivator, but it's a big energy force inside me. And so if the thoughts just stay in my head, they'll kind of ruminate and they'll get sour real quick. And so it's very often, and like I feel like I'm a bit of a crazy person sometimes, but like I talk out loud a lot because I need to hear myself say certain things as like an actual cue for me to like listen. And the same will happen is if I write it down. Like I can't keep it in my head because otherwise I can't visualize it. I'm big like visual learner, kinesthetic. I have to touch it, I have to feel it, I have to, move it. I have to get in touch with my senses with whatever material is coming into my mind. If it stays there, it never takes full form, and then that's when it again turns sour. It goes in a direction that's not healthy, and it's also very easy to like make a negative thought turn into like a big monster, and it also makes it really hard for me to visualize even the good stuff too, right? So the moment that it goes down on paper, and even better the moment that I even say it, so sometimes I'll even talk out loud while I'm writing, just so that there's that tie where I'm like, okay, it makes more sense. A friend of mine, he's a software engineer, has like it's called rubber ducking apparently.
Yeah, rubber ducking,
yeah. And
Josh, former software engineer.
Yeah, just quit, but yeah.
So you know all about it. Like I asked him, I was like, why a rubber duck? Why?
I know nothing about rubber ducking.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I was like, why a rubber duck? And he's like, well, apparently there was like some software engineer who will always have a rubber duck at his desk, and anytime that he had an issue or a problem that he had a hard time solving, instead of just trying to think about it, he would actually talk out loud to this rubber duck like it was an actual person. And oftentimes this what ends up happening is you'll end up finding the solution to your problem simply by just saying it out loud.
Yeah, okay.
Again, so it's almost like a giving form to the problem as opposed to it just being shapeless in your mind.
Yeah.
And so having this practice of talking, and again, it's almost like talking to an actual person, but if there's no person there, just having almost a conversation with yourself. And this is really great for like mental training stuff too, as far as like not just for sports performance, but also if you're like undoing like patterns and trauma, like having conversations with yourself. Really important tool that you can utilize where it's not just you in your own head, but actually reflecting or like bringing those thoughts out into the open, and then having that conversation again with yourself or with an inanimate object, because people don't want to feel like, why are you just talking to yourself? Directing it into a place, and then finding solutions that would be better for you. So journaling is kind of like that for me. Yeah.
That's cool.
Sometimes I don't have the energy to write, but whenever I take time off of it and I come back to it, it's like, oh, that's right. I almost forgot how much good information and how many good revelations I can come to, how many solutions I can come to just by actually seeing like the thought process and seeing how it flows from one point to another.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like as far as the mental training stuff goes, the first step was admitting that it's fucking scary.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
admitting there's a problem.
Yeah. Right. And that's okay. And your self-worth isn't like tied up in that.
Yes.
And then the second step was, was thinking of things that that you know are like objectively true.
Yes.
And that you can like kind of fall back on,
yes.
or like kind of build a little mini resume for yourself.
Yeah, confidence resume.
Yep. Okay, I love that. All right, confidence resume, and then remind me. The third one was like a cue that you can use to like.
Yeah, building ways so that you can, I guess, like again, link the physical to the mental. So having developing ways so that you can redirect thoughts that don't serve you. So sometimes that could even be like, I won't say a mantra, but sometimes you can just repeat to yourself, like when you notice that the snowball effect is happening, something that can get you focused back into the present. Again, it's really easy to either think in the past where we can't do anything, or think too far in the future, it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So being able to like recenter, and so like what can you do in this moment? So developing skills and that can help you get back into the present and keep you focused, and practicing that while training, and then later on bringing that to the actual competition day. So, and then Aaron talks about that too, is like, you know, the game day, like what are your rituals essentially, like things that you're going to do from your warm up to the music you listen to, or your different excitement levels.
Right.
Like that's all things that you have to regulate. And if you're not even aware that that's something that you need to regulate, it can be a crazy ride, you know? So that's why you have a lot of people who like will burn out like their first match. Like they just blow everything in their first match, or having a hard time getting it going because there's too much noise, or there's too much clutter. And so having a process for yourself that is familiar, and something, again, having ways to redirect that energy to a place that's going to be more beneficial or more productive. Let's just say that, more productive, because we always have energy, but if it's put into the wrong place, now it takes away from what it is that we're actually trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a common thread amongst all the best athletes that we've talked to, and just in general of my lifetime of watching sports, hearing about athletes who excel all have things like exactly what you're talking about. So that's cool.
I'm not a trained professional. You know, I must say that I am not a medical professional. I can only speak from my personal experience, but it is very reassuring that you hear that like people have the same experiences, and when they go through that same process, that the solutions are very, like, there's a lot of overlay.
Very consistent. Yeah. It's like this idea of mindfulness that like permeates, like no matter really what I guess the individual athlete is talking about, there's always this layer of like mindfulness involved in, like you said, like admitting that there's a problem, but really that's just like being mindful, like, oh, I actually am scared. Right. And then that goes all the way, it seems like, to the competition itself. You show up to the competition, like, what am I feeling in the moment? Right. What's going through my head? Like, all that kind of stuff.
There's a really good book called Legacy by James Kerr. That I require all of my employees to read. It's a really good business book, but it's about the All Blacks, the rugby team.
I was about to say, like,
And one of the things that they drill into their minds is like, they call it keeping a blue head. And so like when things get like all crazy, calm.
Cool? Oh,
yeah, more or less. So it must be a New Zealander term. I don't know. But keeping a blue head. And so when things start to get crazy, or, you know, because it's a contact sport like ours, you know, if you ever find yourself like going into a negative headspace, finding something that you can ground yourself in, like yours was, you know, getting the water out of your ear or whatever. They talk about like just tapping your toe in your boot, right, and like just doing something to like remove yourself from any like negative like negative emotions that are kind of permeating, and that's what that reminded me of, what you said, you know.
And it's hard because, again, like, it's one thing if you're redirecting your thoughts like outside of the match, you know, like, oh, again, the thoughts come in like, what if I lose? What if it, like, I don't get the grip I want? You know, like, that's before the match. And then actually having to do that in the match as well too is a whole nother beast in itself, because it's, again, like, it can get very overwhelming. So you literally have to train yourself to be able to like just stare down the barrel and be like, okay, if things happen that, in a way like shoot, I missed the sweep, or shoot, I missed this opportunity of a grip, like not hyper obsessing about it and going down the rabbit hole, like chasing this rabbit while the match is still going, and now your brain is somewhere else, and the match is still going. And it's really hard to recover from that if you focus on like the mistakes. It's like, so you also have to train yourself in real time of like, okay, nope, all right, it's gone, move on to something else, move on, because it's moving. It's a moving train at all times. And at any point that we hop off, we get left behind, and it's really, really hard to recover. Imagine trying to run after a train. Like, I'm coming back.
It's a good analogy.
Right? It's like a microcosm of life. That's why I always think like
shit, I fell off the train. Can I get back?
Yeah.
Wait for me. I've got little legs.
Well, that actually like brings me to my next question. I'm curious to know if there's anything, and I think there is, that you've learned in competition that you feel has served you outside of competition or in just your everyday life, your non-jiu-jitsu life.
The main one was about like, again, getting rid of that tie between like my accomplishments or what I do, correlating it to my value as a person. Because I mean, obviously it manifested most in competition because it's a sport, right? There's a winner, there's a loser, right? And sometimes you get like, oh, you're a loser, right? But growing up, trauma, right?
Let's go.
So yeah, let's go. We're sharing this, yeah, woo, bonding. Like that obviously is like, it manifests there because of what happened growing up, which was a lot of feeling like I had to prove my worth, to be worthy of love by family members or friends or classmates or whatever, based off of what I could do. Like if again, coming up with performing arts, that meant like, oh, you have to perform. How else are people going to love you if you don't perform? Right. And so this was just like the step into like, yes, it helped me as a competitor, but the next step after doing the mental training was then, there's this book called Psycho-Cybernetics. I think I've mentioned this before in the past. And essentially it talks about like your blueprint. When we were kids, things happen to us. And this blueprint will then therefore decide how you're going to live the rest of your life based on this blueprint, right? Again, it's the blueprint, then the foundation, and then what you build on top of that, right? Now, how things get onto your blueprint, according to this book, is going to be you have figures who are like superior than you, right? So if you have like a parent or a coach or someone who you look up to telling you something, whether it's positive or negative, could go in your blueprint. Now someone saying something repetitively, you're constantly being told something over and over and over and over again, you're going to start picking up these beliefs about yourself.
Like that's your reality.
Yes.
Right?
And then the intensity.
Yeah.
So you imagine if you have someone like a figurehead in your life that is consistently telling you one thing and like in an intense way, like yelling it or berating you or whatever, like you're going to believe that regardless if it's true or not.
Right.
Because you are in that stage where it's like, well, if they're saying it over and over again and they're this, this big person in my life and they're really, really making a point to like yell at me about it, it has to be true. Like we don't question these things when we're kids,
right.
Or we don't question these things when we're in a younger state of mind, when our brains haven't fully developed yet, because that is our reality. And then later on, what ends up doing is that is now going to decide how we allow people to treat us, how we are going to, what treatment we'll accept, right? And we won't question it. So this will make like the truth about yourself. And then until you actually recognize like, how did that get there? How did that initial belief get there? And then I just went with it without questioning it. Like bad shit can happen from that. Surprise, surprise, right? Good stuff can happen too, but a lot of times I feel like everyone has a lot of negative experiences, which is why they're so powerful. And so having to undo that. So if I hadn't gone through the point of actually admitting that I was afraid, and that I was going to lose value as a person because of that, I would not have gone on to now next reading this book and now addressing all of my childhood trauma, addressing my trauma with sexual assault, addressing all of like the pains of not being supported with having mental health issues. And then becoming now, fast forward to where I am now, I'm a very, very, very loud advocate. Like I'm always going to be championing and talking about these very hard subjects, because I essentially want to be who I needed when I was a kid, and I didn't have that, right? So if it wasn't for that breakdown moment and doing the mental training, that was literally the opening the floodgates to bettering myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might have started off as just wanting to be a good athlete, but eventually it just turned out to me just being a better human.
That's awesome.
I wanted to know how does this all like interplay with that match that we just saw at Euros, for example? Like where in the timeline are we with that match? What are you thinking? I know you said you had a lot of like tough time leading up to that.
Yeah. Like financially was not doing great. I was still in a very toxic relationship where this person was essentially using me or like trying to control me, and me still trying to like be who I want to be, and them trying to like, no, but you need to mother me and you need to take care of me. You can't take care of you. Like, and so like feeling bad about choosing myself, like, I've always been one that like I suffer from people pleasing and imposter syndrome, right? So am I even worthy enough to be here? Like who am I to want to go to try to accomplish these things? But then also like, well, I need to make sure that the people around me are taken care of, and I can't just abandon them, and I have to give up on my thing so other people can be happy. And that has been, again, something that had happened consistently in my life, where people could take advantage of like a kind heart or a good heart, because I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to make people happy. I'm supposed to accommodate them. And it took for me to like, man, I really have to stand up for myself and make these things happen. You know, I can't let people take opportunities from me or make me feel bad about embracing these opportunities when they're there for me. So I had to do like fundraising for it, you know, then like being in a relationship with someone who's literally sucking you dry mentally, financially, emotionally, just all around, like, this is not a good person. And at that point I was still with them. It wasn't maybe until maybe a little bit after, or maybe I did already end things before then. It just, a lot of it was like, man, I had to be in this relationship, find this person who's essentially saying that, like, even getting ready for it, they're like, yeah, I'll if you promise to work hard, I'll pay for it, or I'll pay to get you there. I'm like, in my head, like, you don't even pay the bills. What are you talking about? You know,
so weird.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, make it make sense. And wanting to do this tournament since I was a blue belt, little baby blue belt, back in 2009, and again, like, understanding that, again, this is not a sport that you do to get rich, right? Understanding like that, like, yeah, having to raise the funds, and so that I could do this, but also still pay the bills that were racking up because of this person in my life. And then, and all the struggling of like, no, you have to keep fighting in my head. Like, you got to keep fighting for your worth, You got to keep doing it, even though it's lonely, even though it's hard, even though like there's the dieting and all the training and the early days and you question like if it's going to be worth it. You know, like, man, you said that this is what you want to do, and now you're here. Like, are you really just gonna like fall flat like that? And so that moment when the win actually happened is like, holy shit, we're here again. Like, I couldn't believe that it happened, and a lot of it was just kind of like that release of like, finally, you know, like for those who like tried to work against me, for those like for all the hardships of all the things that I had to go through just to get to that point, and it was just in the beginning, and having it be my first major as a black belt, it's just very, very emotional.
Yeah.
And then again, like, double downing on like, these are the standards that I need to uphold for myself, and I cannot allow other people to, if you're not going to support me, or if you're going to be I don't say you're going to be a burden on me, but if you're literally going to be sucking me dry, like, you have no place in my life.
Right.
And so it was almost like the little war cry of like, I'm standing up for myself, which, you know, I feel like that's kind of like been like the theme of my life. It's so hard for me to stand up for myself. I know I try to be like, I'm big and tough, ha ha ha. I'm like, I'll be the protector, and I'll stand up for the people around me. Like, no, you can't do that. Like, you know, treat yourself better, or like, don't allow them to do that to you. But when it comes to me, it's like, oh, but, you know. And so having that as like a little, like that moment of it all coming together, like just that crystallization of like, yeah, we fucking stood up for ourselves.
Yeah. In like 10 seconds, like all of this entire life and like all, like everything from like since you were a kid to then all the way to like now you as a competitor, everything, and then like this 10 seconds and then
that 10 seconds was just like, this is who I am. Like, this is who I'm meant to be. Like, I'm a fighter, and I'm someone who doesn't I'm a fighter. Like, I'm not gonna give up as much as you're gonna, you know, beat me down and pick on me and kick me off to the side or make things incredibly difficult for me. I'm gonna find a way to make it happen. I will. I'm determined. I am determined to make that happen. And so that was that, like, because I just refused. I refused to be, you know, be stamped down on. and we just made made the stand for ourselves.
Dang, I want to cry.
Yeah. Like, I want to cry. You had to be there.
Oh man. That's wild.
And then having Kaio there, like, all of them, like, before the timer even went off, before she even tapped, like, even if she didn't tap, I'm hearing Kaio, and I'm hearing like one of my best friends, you know, Brian, they're like, you won, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, she didn't even tap there, and then like it just happens, like,
oh, that's
cool.
cool.
Bring it together, okay. Like, do the hand raise, all right.
What a ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.